Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. Camp Constitution Radio can be heard every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WBCQ The Planet, which is broadcast out of Monticello, Maine. And before we bring on our guest, I'd like to talk a little bit about the entity that hosts the show, Camp Constitution. And among other things, Camp Constitution has a wonderful week-long family camp, which is coming right up just in a couple of months. It is held at the beautiful Towanipi Christian Retreat Center in Ringe, New Hampshire, from July 12th to the 19th. Is actually a week and a day, Sunday afternoon to Sunday morning, and folks can come a day late and leave a day early if they wish. And for more information about our camp, www.campconstitution.net. This year's camp, we have a really great lineup of instructors and activities. We have Tom DeWeese of the American Policy Center, Chris Ann Hall, constitutional evangelist traveling around the country, speaking on the importance of understanding not just our Constitution, but history, our godly heritage. We have Pastor Lear, the Patriot Pastor. He'll be there to give some class. And in addition, we're going to be taking a full-day field trip to the site of the original Boston Tea Party and the Tea Party Museum, the Massachusetts State House, and a whole host of other things. So again, it's a family camp, whole families, unaccompanied minors also welcome. Again, www.campconstitution.net. And when you visit our website, you will see a bookstore, and you'll find some excellent publications that we have put together. And anyway, our guest today is Reverend Mike Heath of the Exodus Mandate. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, Hal, I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, well, welcome to the show. Just a little introduction. I've known Mike for, I guess, a number of years. You used to be the director of the Christian Civic League in Augusta, Maine. At one time, you ran Ron Paul's campaign in Iowa, Ron Paul for president. And you are currently with the Exodus Mandate and also Classical Conversations.
Yeah, we have a number of activities that we work on, my wife and me. My wife's name is Polly, and she's a Christian singer, songwriter, and pianist. She also teaches students, piano students and voice students in our home, and she's a support manager for Classical Conversations, which is a homeschooling community nationwide. And Exodus Mandate is one of the hats that I wear, which I ended up getting that hat when I was working on the Ron Paul campaign down in South Carolina, and I met E. Ray Moore, who's the founder of Exodus Mandate.
What is the purpose of your Exodus Mandate? Exodus, of course, is referring to the Bible. Let my people go. What exactly is the major focus of the organization?
Well, many people, Christians and non-Christians, will be familiar with the story of Moses leaving Egypt. And E. Ray Moore, 20 years ago, felt that the idea of using our children as little evangelists and sending them into the government-run public schools was not only dangerous, but not advisable, and he started this ministry and decided to call it Exodus Mandate because he believes, and I agree with him, that Christians are going to have to get their families and get especially their children, out of these indoctrination centers. And research has been showing for years now that even if your child is in a youth group, a church youth group, and you faithfully attend church, the fact that they're really being taught morals by the television and in the school means that when they become young adults, they abandon Christianity, and so we should be concerned about that. We as parents and grandparents, we should be concerned about that above anything else.
I saw a statistic somewhere that Christian children in public schools pretty much agree with their non-Christian. And when I say non-Christian, they may be Christians by default, but they're not professing believing Christians, the average child in a public school. That about 85% of them will say, for example, there are no moral absolutes. But those in Christian schools or homeschoolers, it's a... Hello?
Al, you went dead for a minute. Are you still there?
Okay, that's the nature of talk shows sometimes. But I mentioned that there was a statistic that I saw recently where 85% of Christians in public schools, or government schools would be a more appropriate title for it, believe there are no moral absolutes. And why should we be surprised when they spend 5 to 6, maybe 7 hours a day, 5 days a week in an environment that's hostile to Christianity?
And it's so sad, Hal. You invited me to schedule this program when we were together in Worcester, and
at a homeschool show, yes.
Yeah, at a homeschooling convention, and we had a chance to fellowship there and talk and make share some observations with one another. And one of the things I think we both appreciated about that gathering, hundreds of people, families, people of all ages, right, from grandparents down to...
Oh, yes.
And for 2 days, and the sense that I got that I was with really decent people who were interested in learning and who were interested in being moral and being good, not only in gaining knowledge and facts and the ability to think well and accomplish intellectual tasks, but more important with this group is the need to become good people, to grow in righteousness, to pursue wisdom. And I can think of no better example, Hal, than the 18-year-old girl that was next to me manning a booth for Living Waters Bible Camp. And she's 18, and she's written 3 full-length novels.
Wow.
And she's marketing her 3rd one, having cut her teeth on the first 2 and feeling, I suppose, that they weren't worthy of being sent on to potential publishers. But her 3rd one she feels good about, and I spoke with her a number of times during the 2 days. She's really got a great strategic sense and attitude about her work, and if you know what I mean. And she's 18.
She has a purpose in life. She has and I noticed the same thing. We did a homeschool show in Maine, and you were also there with your wife. And there was 2 young people right next to my table. They were the Titanic heroes. There was a 70-year-old gal and a 15-year-old brother. And I think she had written 2 books, and they were giving classes and seminars, and they really got their act together, promoting free markets system, promoting setting up your own business and things like that. There aren't too many people I would see in the non-homeschool world that would do that. And in the Worcester Homeschool Show put on by Mass Hope, there was this young man. He's been there like the last 3 or 4 years. He's probably 17 or 18. He's got his own business where he makes wood products. He learned the trade from his grandfather, and he's in the home. He's from New Hampshire, and this is just very encouraging to see that the type of leadership skills that these young people have.
I chatted with that young man at the Mass Hope Convention, the one who turns out he makes custom crafted writing pens, and he is preparing to leave this summer to go to a foreign nation. I think it was Ecuador, and he's going there to do missionary work.
That's amazing.
Yeah, young.
Yeah. Now, I know that, of course, obviously, homeschool parents know why they're out of school. They're not there by choice, and it's quite a sacrifice that parents have to make. And what's interesting is I observe that most parents, regardless of their background, their ethnic background, racial background, even a religious background, they pretty much want what's best for their children. Well, they think they do. They may have the best doctors. They may have the best diet. But when it comes to education, they seem to think, well, it's okay to put them in a place where they don't know much about the teachers. They haven't really vetted them at all in a public school or government school. And they're exposed to some pretty, I would say, crazy worldviews. Something, I'm 56 years of age. I know there was probably a little bit of that going on, but I have nothing but fond memories of my history teacher. I don't know if she was a liberal or conservative. She may have been a little on the liberal side, but she loved America. And we had to memorize dates and places. But I'll never forget, 7th grade, this very attractive young science teacher. She may have been 25, and she told us that evolution. And she never said that your parents are liars or that the church is a liar, is lying about this. She just promoted what she thought was true about evolution. And you sort of listen to that and you think, well, then you go back to your Sunday school and you back to your church, and well, if that first sentence is sort of up for grabs in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, well, then pretty much the rest of the Bible's up for grabs. If you can't believe that very first sentence in Genesis, maybe the other things about morality and about a resurrection of Jesus Christ and about an afterlife and the right and the wrong, and maybe those things aren't so accurate either. And it's very easy to fall into that, especially when the culture is so pervasively evolutionary. Even many Christians have an evolutionary perspective. Oh, there's a gap theory, things like that.
How I think in the last century, what emerged is there was a shift away from where the public, the American public, and even the Western public, Europe and America, moving away from trusting their priests and their pastors, their Christian leadership, to guide them into righteousness, to define morality, a shift from seeking that information, that perspective, from Christianity, which really made the West morally over the last 1,500 years after Rome collapsed, and it shifted to the scientists and to the
behavior psychiatrists, really.
Yeah, the folks who get the letters behind their names and spend years, if not decades, in school and become intellectually interesting, smart. They become smart. And we've decided as a society, as a civilization, the West has decided that these are the leading lights of our morality. They're going to define what's right and what's wrong. Hence, we now end up at what I consider to be the end of the road, and this was the issue that I worked the hardest on at Christian Civic League of Maine, and that's this descent into madness that began with this. Well, it sort of continued. It began, I think, in a really dramatic way with birth control back in the early part of the 20th century. Back in the early part of the 20th century with family planning and Margaret Sanger, birth control still being promoted as part of the population.
And eugenics, too. That's another thing that the left is embarrassed about today, is the notion that certain people are superior. The Nazis embraced that, but it started here in the United States, this eugenics movement, that you can purify the race by abortions and things of that nature. And this is what's pervasive in our public school today.
And how did this happen? It happened because we stopped going to the priests and the pastors and the Bible and centuries, if not, millennia, two millennia of experience and knowledge and law and morality, namely Christianity. We stopped going there to decide what's going to be right and wrong in our society. Yeah, what's going to be practiced as moral, and we turn to the scientists and to the intellectuals who have cut themselves adrift from that anchor. And so now, what are we looking at? We're looking at here in Maine. I live in Maine. I think it was 2 weeks ago, an elementary school down, I think in Kittery, southern part of the state. 20 out of 22 classes had a teacher, an adult, to kindergartner through, I think it was second graders, and she read one of these. There's a lot of these books that are now being written by this folks who are promoting sodomy. That's how I choose to say. I don't like to use the word gay because they stole that word.
Well, that's what it is. It's not. It's what God calls it an abomination, and why should we call it something less?
And so this descent that I'm talking about away from the high ideals of Christianity, which Christianity itself teaches us none of us reach that. That's the whole purpose for our Savior Jesus coming. The perfect ideal exists in God the Father, and we strive for it in our marriages and in our lives, but we fall short. And but we don't now. So we've got this teacher reading to very impressionable young children planting in their minds the notion that they need to be accepting of, if not in themselves, in their peers, the fact that a little boy might actually be a girl because he thinks he's a girl, even though he's biologically a boy. This idea is presented in propaganda to very young children.
Jesus mentioned. Jesus was clear when he said that to cause a little one to sin, you better put him a millstone and jumping into the sea. And it's happening. It's not just in a little town in Maine. It's happening all over the country. They've been sexualizing our children. They seem to have the floodgates have been opened the last few years. Now, I live in Massachusetts, where we have this thing called single-sex or same-sex marriage. And because of that, the state now has a compelling interest to promote the homosexual lifestyle. So a lot of these people, especially these libertarian-minded people, say, hey, the government has no business involved in marriage. That sounds all well and good, but they're not just they are openly spending millions of dollars promoting it every chance they get, especially in our public schools. And now that Common Core has been embraced by 46 or more states, that part of the curriculum is to sexual standards. You think, well, if you're interested in math and reading and science, what does this have to do? Why do you have to know about transgenders and saying homosexuality as a positive? Why are you even talking that? Children are innocent at that age, so they're destroying the innocence of children.
And it's hard not to conclude that the depths to which this is designed to descend are utterly evil and diabolical. But yet it's all around it. It's on it's ABC Family, which ABC bought the Family Channel from Pat Robertson from I forget the news, but anyway, the CBN, from CBN, he started the Family Channel. ABC bought it, and a few weeks ago, they very proudly featured in one of their dramas the first romantic kiss between two 13-year-old boys. on television.
Well, yeah, and that's, you see, people say, we talk about the slippery slope concept, because I remember back in the early 70s, and the homosexuals said, what two consenting adults do in their bedroom is nobody's business. So, and you might say, well, it's no one's business, but if I have to subsidize the result of that behavior, then maybe it is my business. But from that is not just acceptance, but it's militant acceptance. We don't even want you thinking it's a bad thing.
Yeah,
and we're going to lower the next step is to lower the age of consent. And what's interesting is that you've heard of John Maynard Keynes, the British Fabian socialist. A lot of people don't know that he was not only was he a socialist, but he was a pedophile, and he had a partner by the name of Lytton Strachey. I think I might be not pronouncing his his first name correct, but Strachey. He was a playwright, critic, or what have you, and he wrote a letter to Keynes, and he said, by the year 2000, we will have a homosexual world. And I'm wondering what he knew that most people today are still doing. He was off by a few years, but he was in 1920 and early 20s. He said by the year 2000 we will have a homosexual world, and we're coming close to that because
I think he got it right. I was involved in Maine at the highest levels with the debate, and we were just living on fumes in terms of holding back that agenda in 2000, and it really turned a corner in 2000 and became it's the marker of enlightened tolerance. Your attitude toward sodomy, it better be good and it better be right, or you could get in big trouble, lose your career, look at this florist, out in Washington State.
It happened in New York, upper state New York too. There was a small catering business, and they were Christian folks that owned it, and they actually had a homosexual working in the business, and they wanted to have they had no trouble catering the event, but they didn't want to they didn't want to deal with the marriage. They didn't want the marriage on their property. They said, we can't do that. Well, they were fined $10,000, plus they had to pay the two lesbian ladies $1,000 apiece. About $10,000 went to the state, and as a result of that, they had to fire the homosexual person. So it's not just acceptance. It's not. You can't even think that it's wrong. And what's interesting too, you get a chance to. We had Reverend Kraft, our information table, who's a black man. And can you imagine, if a Ku Klux Klan member went to a dry cleaners that happened to be owned by a black, and say, you got to clean my outfit here, or I'm going to sue you. Or if you're a neo-Nazi and you go to a Jewish delicatessen telling you want a swastika shaped like a knish and get a cater our event, it's ridiculous. They would say, get out of my store. We're not going to get out of my business. It would nothing. In fact, not too many people come out in defense of it. But today, when the state in this compelling interest stuff, and that's a dangerous term because that could mean anything. If the state has compelling interest in education, that means it controls education. So these vague terms, legal terms, are very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And it has us focused away from what we all really want to think about and talk about, which is love and marriage and the durability of relationships, especially relationships that bring maturity and wisdom and safety to the next generation, to children. We don't really go deep with those ideas anymore. Instead, the subject turns very quickly to these, what I call the parade of horribles, and the need for us to give money to this group or that group to fight against this parade of horribles.
Well, the destruction of the nuclear family has been the goal of the Fabian socialist and the far left for many, many years.
I think that's a key. I think that's a key, Hal, and that's one of the reasons I'm drawn close to you John Birch Society, because folks have been saying that for decades, and it makes sense. I mean, they end up with the power because the power because the individual is no longer empowered because he doesn't have any sort of society around him. And so,
I used to teach a Sunday school class, and I would, 4th and 5th graders, and I would talk about layers of government. And I said the first layer is self-government. The second layer is family government. And we got a little taste of that. The Baltimore riots, there was a black woman who happened to see her son throwing rocks or what have you, and she went down there, and she just grabbed him by the ear, slapped him around. Now, that's family government taking care of. That's too bad that it got to that level, probably because there's no daddy around, but at least she took action and responsibility. And if there were parents, if other parents took action and responsibility, there would be no riots. There wouldn't be the problem we have in the inner city. And look what the government has done to been involved in destroying the black family. And it's happening to all families, regardless of race or color. And that's the purpose of what we see here. They want to destroy the family, get the father out of the way, let the government be the daddy, give you food stamps and housing. And what was the consequences? High crime, out-of-wedlock births, and the disintegration of the American family. And that's our biggest problem right now. And so that's why it's so important, folks, to look into getting your children out of those government schools. I know it's a step. It's difficult for many, but it is worth doing because they're probably not going to get any better in the foreseeable future. If anything, it's going to get worse and worse. So, like we like to walk the walk and talk the talk. Our children have never been in a public school outside of visiting the one church. There was a church holding a service in a public school on a Sunday, but we encourage others. And so if people want to get a hold of your ministry, how can they do that?
Well, we're all over the web, and my name, MikeHeath.net, or just Google my name, Mike Heath, and I think I come up pretty much on page 1. My wife also has a website where your listeners can learn more about her.
Oh, by the way, I've heard her sing. She is incredible. She's got a wonderful gift, and she's just a powerful lady. And you blessed me with a cassette. I mean, I'm not a cassette boy. I'm old-fashioned. A CD of her music, and she's definitely somebody that if you have a ladies group and you're listening to this show, please look into having her speak to your group.
She's very traditional in her views about gender, and you've listened to her music. The production values are excellent. But what's more important to me about Polly's ministry is that her heart is fully in it. She really means what she's singing, and she's written, 30 or 40 songs and produced them. And
I tell you what, young ladies, so especially who are new to the faith, need mentoring by mature Christian women, and that's something we don't see enough of. So definitely, PollyHeath.com, I think, is her website, or dot.
Yeah, it is.
.org.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. PAULI, but it comes up on Polly, POLLY as well, PollyHeath.com. And then at those websites, Helping Hands Ministries comes up, and you can learn all about us. Yeah. Okay,
well, we have about 30 seconds left. I just want to thank you, Reverend Mike, for being on the show. And thank you for listening. This is Camp Constitution Radio, heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday night, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, www.campconstitution.net. God bless.